The bell over the gas station door gave that cheap little jingle, the kind that sounds like loose change and bad coffee. I stepped in with motor oil on my knuckles and road grit in my teeth, counting quarters for a pack of beef jerky and a black coffee that had been burning since dawn. The place smelled like sugar glaze and gasoline. Then I saw her, Maya, standing at the counter with a lottery clerk whose hands shook like he'd seen a ghost. The machine rattled and spit out a slip, and the clerk's face went sheet white. "Sir," he whispered, voice catching. This one's it." The next 5 seconds stretched thin as fishing line. The screen behind the counter flashed the numbers that had been everywhere all week. Billboards on I-84, radio spots while I drove routes, a fever that caught the whole town. Maya had them. Every last one. She pressed the ticket flat with 2 fingers like it might fly away, then looked up slow, eyes blown wide with incredulity, and a kind of frightened joy I hadn't seen since she learned to ride a bike without training wheels. People turned. Phones came up. The register drawer clapped shut. The air seemed to tighten, buzzing with neon and breath and cheap cologne. I felt something swell inside me, something father-shaped and proud, and I stepped forward with my hands out. I didn't say her name. I didn't have to. She saw me. The joy on her face flickered. "Dad?" she said, soft enough only I heard. The word still did that thing to me, warming my ribs from the inside out. I gave her the smallest nod, like I always did when the world got big and she needed a steady horizon. Then the manager popped a bottle of gas station champagne. Foam sprayed across the rack of scratch-offs. A teenager I didn't know shouted that this was insane. And someone, maybe it was the universe, started playing a pop song on their phone. Maya's boyfriend, Tyler, slid in beside her wearing a hoodie that probably cost more than my truck payment and wrapped his arm around her shoulders like he'd been rehearsing it. He kissed her hair. The crowd cheered. My chest tightened a notch. "Biggest jackpot winner in county history," the manager shouted, holding the ticket like a holy thing. Maya laughed, a high, startled sound that didn't match her eyes. She was shaking. I made it to the counter, elbows sticky from spilled energy drink, and lowered my voice. "You okay, kiddo?" "I'm fine," she said, but her gaze kept darting, scanning for exits. She hated to be the center of anything. When Tyler lifted her hand and spun her like a prize on a game show, she winced. I wanted to pull her into the quiet aisle between dog food and transmission fluid and remind her to breathe. I wanted to say the thing I'd said to her before every big moment. Tests, auditions, the day she left for college. "You're not alone," I'd whisper. "You've got me." Instead, I stood there with coffee steam twisting up and the burn of old engine grease under my nails, aware suddenly of my work boots, of the faded name patch on my coveralls, of the way people's eyes slid from her diamond-bright ticket to the man who'd raised her in a rented double-wide at the edge of town. A reporter arrived out of nowhere, mic in hand, press badge swinging. "How does it feel to go from nothing to everything?" she asked, trained smile parked on her lips. Maya's jaw firmed. "I didn't come from nothing," she said, but the words came out brittle, like ice in a glass. The reporter tilted the mic toward her again, and Tyler squeezed her arm. "Babe, say something big," he murmured. "Manifest it." Her gaze found mine. For a heartbeat I saw the little girl in the thrift store parka I'd mended with dental floss, because payday was 2 weeks out, and the zipper busted in a storm. Then something shuttered behind her eyes, and she turned to the camera. I braced myself. "I grew up poor," she said, voice steady now, amplified by a dozen phones. "I learned to be tough, but being tough doesn't mean you owe people who kept you small." My throat sanded dry. The crowd sucked in a breath. The fluorescent lights hummed. She swallowed, lifted her chin, and said the sentence that split my life into before and after. "You raised me poor," she said, looking right through me like I was a window on a closed shop. "You don't deserve anything." The words hit like a cold wind knifing under a door. They pushed past my ribs and settled in the hollow where pride had been a minute ago. The room got loud and far away, everyone talking at once. Tinny music, cork on tile, plastic bags rustling. I didn't move. The coffee warmed my palm and then went lukewarm, and still I didn't move. I thought of the nights counting coins on the kitchen table, of selling my motorcycle to cover her braces, of skipping heat for 2 weeks so she could go on the 8th grade field trip to DC. I thought of her junior prom dress, the one we found at a consignment store, the way she glowed in it anyway, how she hugged me before walking out the door and said, "We're not poor, Dad. We're just us." Now she stood 10 feet away and made me a stranger. Tyler leaned into the microphone. "We're building a future," he said, projecting. "We'll be smart. Protect our energy. Protect our energy." I could taste the words like battery acid. I felt everyone watching me, waiting for the sad dad scene. The trembling lip, the plea. What I felt instead was a quiet click inside, like a wrench finding the right notch. I set the coffee on the counter. "Congratulations," I said. My voice came out even, maybe too even. Maya's mouth twitched. For a second I saw confusion, regret, something human. Then the reporter swung the mic back and the moment blew away. Outside, October air bit my cheeks. A siren dopplered somewhere across town. I put my hands on the hood of my truck and let the metal cool my palms. The lot smelled like diesel and fallen leaves, and the faint ghost of fireworks from when the high school won homecoming last Friday. Somewhere behind me, the crowd roared again. She was theirs now, or thought she was. Money has a way of making a stage out of a sidewalk. I stared at my reflection in the windshield, crow's feet deeper than I remembered, a nick on my jaw from a rushed shave, the kind of tired that lives in a man's shoulders. I waited for the anger to rise like a tide. It didn't. What came instead was memory, then clarity, then a steadying breath that tasted like cold air, and a decision. She'd written a sentence across my life. Fine. I'd write one back, not out loud, not for cameras, but in the only ink that matters. Choices. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to chase. I was going to build something that couldn't be bought, something that wouldn't flinch under a neon sign or a microphone. I would let her find out, at a speed only experience can teach, that money doesn't replace the kind of love that shows up when the radiator dies on the interstate at midnight. I slid into the driver's seat, the upholstery crackling in the cold, and gripped the wheel. The keys felt heavy and honest in my hand. When the engine turned over, it was rough, then smooth, like a man clearing his throat before he says the first true thing in a long time. "All right," I said to nobody. "All right." The week after the win felt like a storm I wasn't invited to watch. News trucks came, helicopters thudded overhead, and Maya's face was everywhere, smiling beside Tyler in that same hoodie, talking about dreams, independence, and breaking cycles. I'd hear her voice coming from TVs in bars, from radios at the shop. Each time, my stomach twisted like a wrench too tight on a bolt. I didn't call her, didn't text. I figured she needed space. Pride has its own gravity, and mine was heavy. Still, I left the porch light on every night, same as I had when she was in high school and missed curfew. Habit, hope, foolishness, whatever you wanted to call it. On the 5th night, a black SUV pulled up out front. I went out, heart hammering like an old engine fighting to start. For a split second I imagined her stepping out, saying she was sorry, that she'd gotten caught up. But it wasn't her. It was a man in a navy suit, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Carter?" he asked. "Yeah." He handed me an envelope. "From Ms. Maya Carter." I took it. The paper was thick, expensive. I could smell the cologne from his sleeves. He didn't wait for a reply, just turned and walked off. The SUV disappeared into the dark. Inside, under the yellow glow of the kitchen bulb, I opened it. 2 pages. No greeting, no warmth, just legal language I barely recognized. It said she was moving out of state. Said I was not to contact her for financial or personal requests. Said any correspondence should go through her representative. And at the bottom, in her handwriting, "I need to build a new life. You taught me to survive. Now I'm learning to live. Please don't make this harder." I read that line until the words lost meaning. I'd taught her to survive, working double shifts, skipping meals, pawning my tools so she could get textbooks. But I hadn't realized that somewhere along the way, she'd learned to equate love with lack. I folded the letter, set it beside the salt shaker, and stared at the cracked vinyl on the chair opposite me. the one she used to sit in, swinging her legs, telling me about science fairs and talent shows. The house creaked with wind, and for the first time in years, I noticed how quiet it was when no one needed me. The next morning, I drove to work early. The guys didn't say much, but I could feel their pity. Someone had printed out the newspaper article with Maya's photo and taped it to the vending machine. I pulled it down without a word. Around lunch, my boss, Ray, came over. "Heard about your girl," he said, scratching his chin. "Guess she won't be asking you for gas money anymore, huh?" I tried to smile. Failed. "Guess not." He shifted awkwardly, then added, "You know, sometimes money just changes people." "Maybe it doesn't change them," I said, tightening a bolt until it squealed. "Maybe it just shows what they were waiting to say." That night, I walked past her old room. Still smelled faintly of that cheap vanilla spray she used to drown the air with. I sat on her bed and found the photo on the nightstand. Me and her fishing at Clear Lake. Both sunburned, both grinning like fools with a fish barely big enough to keep. She was 10. The world back then was small and enough. I held the photo until dawn light spilled across the floor. Then I made a promise. If she didn't want me near her new life, I wouldn't go near it. But I wouldn't disappear either. I'd build something of my own, something real, something she couldn't call poor. I just didn't know yet that the road to that promise would begin with a stranger's broken-down car and a child with eyes too old for her age. 3 weeks later, the first frost hit the valley. The morning smelled like wet pine and exhaust, and every breath came out white. I was driving the service truck down Route 16 before sunrise, headed to a job fixing a busted pump at the old mill. The radio hummed some soft rock from the 90s, one of those songs that used to play when Maya was little, and we'd drive around looking for yard sales just to walk through rich people's lawns for free. Halfway down the stretch where the road bends along the lake, I spotted a car pulled over on the shoulder, hood up, hazard lights blinking weakly. A woman stood there, bundled in a faded red coat, one hand on her hip, the other waving like she wasn't sure if she wanted help or just someone to see her. I slowed down, tires crunching gravel. The woman looked up, face pale with cold and frustration. In the back seat, through a fogged window, I saw a small figure, a girl, hugging a stuffed animal close. "Morning," I called, stepping out. "Car trouble?" She blew into her hands. "Battery's dead. I've been trying to flag someone for almost an hour." I glanced at the kid. "Cold morning for that." The woman nodded, then looked at my coveralls. "You with a shop?" "Carter's Auto," I said automatically. It used to sound like something solid. Lately, it just sounded like one more thing fading. She smiled faintly. "Good timing, then." I popped her hood, hooked up the jump cables, and told her to try the ignition. The engine sputtered, then roared back to life. The little girl clapped her hands inside the car. The woman exhaled, half relief, half exhaustion. "Thank you," she said. "I'm sorry, I don't have much cash on me." "Don't worry about it," I said. "Just glad it started." She looked at me for a beat, eyes soft but guarded. "I'm Ellie. That's Sophie." The girl pressed her palm to the glass in a silent wave. Her hair was messy, her eyes curious, sharp. Something about that look hit me deep. Like Maya's when she was small, asking if rain was just the sky crying because it missed us. "Nice to meet you both," I said. Ellie hesitated. "You sure I can't, at least, buy you breakfast? There's a diner a few miles back." Normally, I'd have refused, but something in her voice, tired, sincere, made me pause. I shrugged. "All right. I could use coffee that doesn't taste like radiator fluid." The diner was half empty, all chrome and faded booths. The waitress knew my name. She knew everyone's. Ellie ordered pancakes for Sophie and coffee for us both. I noticed her hands shaking as she added sugar, more than anyone should need. "You from around here?" I asked. "Used to be," she said. "Left a while ago. Didn't plan on coming back, but..." She trailed off. The girl cut in, syrup on her chin. "We're staying at the shelter for now. Mom says it's temporary." Ellie froze, then gave a small apologetic smile. "Kids and their honesty." I nodded slowly. "Temporary's a good word. Means you're still fighting." Her eyes flicked up to mine. "You sound like you've done your share." "More than I'd like," I said, half smiling. We talked a while. about nothing and everything, about how expensive rent had gotten, about second chances, about how kids see the world with too much truth. I found myself laughing again, the kind of laugh that shakes off dust you didn't realize had settled on your heart. When we stood to leave, Ellie said, "If you ever need help at the shop, I've done some front desk work before." I almost told her I didn't need anyone, that I barely had enough work for myself. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way she straightened her shoulders like someone used to being told no before they even asked. "Come by Monday," I said. "We'll see what we can figure out." Sophie beamed. "Does that mean we can stay longer?" Ellie's voice broke a little when she said, "Maybe, sweetheart, maybe." As they left, I caught our reflection in the diner window. Me, a man built out of quiet regrets, and them, a pair of souls still trying to rebuild something of their own. For the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe my story wasn't over. Maybe losing Maya wasn't the end. It was just the clearing before something new grew. I didn't know then that Ellie and Sophie would become the center of that new life, that they'd show me what family means when blood walks away but love stays behind. Ellie showed up that Monday morning exactly on time, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled, determination written across her face. Sophie was with her, holding a worn backpack covered in faded cartoon stickers. I was halfway through tuning a Chevy when they arrived, the smell of oil thick in the air. "Still want to work in this dump?" I asked, half joking. Ellie smiled. "You call it a dump, I call it potential." That made me laugh, a small, rusty sound that surprised even me. I handed her an old rag. "You start by wiping the counters. They haven't seen a decent cleaning since last summer." She didn't hesitate. She just got to work. By noon, the place looked like someone had finally cared about it again. The dusty fan was running, invoices stacked neatly. Even the window let in a bit of light. Sophie sat in the corner drawing on cardboard scraps, humming softly. Every now and then she'd hold up her work, a house, a dog, a car with 2 stick figures inside, and ask if it looked right. It always did. Over the next few weeks, things shifted. The shop wasn't just a place for broken engines anymore. It started feeling alive. Ellie had this way of bringing order without making it feel strict, like she was rebuilding something invisible around both of us. She handled customers like she'd been born behind that desk, calm but firm, her voice steady even when folks got impatient. One evening after we closed up, she leaned against the counter, sipping a Coke from the vending machine. "You ever think about hiring help full-time?" she asked. I looked around at the cleaner shop, the small pile of invoices finally paid, the faint sound of Sophie laughing outside as she played with a stray dog that had started hanging around. "Guess I already did," I said. She smiled softly. "You're not like most people, are you?" I shrugged. "Most people are busy pretending to be more than they are. I'm just tired." Her eyes met mine. Tired too, but not defeated. "Tired can be honest," she said. That night, when I got home, I found Maya on TV again. New haircut, designer clothes, standing beside Tyler at some charity gala. The headline said something about philanthropy and new beginnings. She was talking about helping underprivileged youth. My coffee went cold in my hand. Underprivileged youth. That was what she called kids like she'd once been. Kids like Sophie. I turned off the TV. The silence after felt clean. By December, snow had started to gather on the shop roof. Work picked up. Farm trucks breaking down. Old engines freezing. The kind of business that keeps a small town alive in winter. Ellie brought in coffee every morning, and Sophie insisted on helping, handing me wrenches and naming each one like they were pets. One afternoon, a customer came in. Big guy in a tailored coat, sunglasses, voice too smooth to trust. He leaned on the counter and asked, "You Carter?" "Yeah," I said, wiping my hands. He slid a business card across the surface. "I work for Ms. Maya Carter. She's looking to settle a few matters. She'd like to buy this property. Cash offer." Ellie froze behind him. I stared at the card, the letters clean and sharp like they'd never been smudged by real work. "Not for sale," I said. "She's being generous," he pressed. "She says you could use a break." I almost laughed. "Tell her I've been broken before. Didn't need her money then. Don't need it now." He looked at me for a moment, probably trying to decide if I was bluffing, then gave a polite nod and left. Ellie stepped closer, voice quiet. "That your daughter?" "Used to be," I said. The snow outside started falling heavier, flakes swirling in the wind like ash and forgiveness. I stood there for a long while, staring at the empty doorway. Ellie placed a hand on my arm. "You built something good here, Carter. Don't let anyone take it away." Her touch was steady, grounding. And for the first time since Maya's words in that gas station, I didn't feel poor. I felt rich in a way she'd forgotten existed. Outside, Sophie ran through the snow with the stray dog, her laughter echoing against the tin walls. For the first time in a long time, that sound felt like home. The snow didn't stop for 3 days. It came down thick and quiet, the kind that swallows sound and slows the world. Most of the town shut down, but the shops stayed open. Old trucks still broke, heaters still died, and people still needed help. Ellie showed up each morning wrapped in layers, Sophie in tow, pink cheeks and wild curls, carrying a thermos half her size. We became a rhythm, me fixing, Ellie managing, Sophie bringing life to the empty corners. She'd built a fort in the office out of spare tires and old blankets, called it her castle. Every time I looked over and saw her there, crown made of paper clips, I couldn't help but smile. One afternoon, as I was under a Dodge trying to free a rusted bolt, Ellie poked her head in. "You have a visitor." I slid out from under the truck, wiping my hands. "Who is it?" Her voice dipped low. "You should see for yourself." Standing in the doorway was Maya, my daughter. She looked polished, not just clean but polished. Every inch of her radiated money, sleek black coat, manicured nails, expensive perfume that didn't belong in a place that smelled like grease and old tires. Tyler wasn't with her this time. "Hey, Dad," she said, voice careful, like testing thin ice. I hadn't heard her call me that in months. It almost didn't sound real. "Didn't expect to see you here," I said. She glanced around, nose wrinkling slightly. "I was driving through town. Thought I'd stop." "Through town?" I echoed. "Right." Sophie peeked from her fort, curious. Maya followed the movement with her eyes, then looked back at me. "You have people here?" "They're friends," I said. Ellie came over, wiped her hands on a rag, and nodded politely. "Hi, I'm Ellie." Maya gave her one of those practiced smiles, the kind that ends at the lips, never the eyes. "Of course." There was a pause, heavy and cold as the air outside. Finally she said, "I heard you refused the offer." "Wasn't hard to do. I was trying to help you, Dad." I leaned against the workbench. "You did, just not the way you think." Her brows knit. "You're still angry." "No," I said softly. "I'm not angry anymore." She shifted, uncomfortable. "Look, I said things I shouldn't have. The cameras, everything, it got to me. I didn't mean to hurt you." But she had. Not just with words, but with the belief behind them. The kind that takes years to unlearn. I studied her a long moment. "You said I raised you poor." Maybe that was true. But poverty's not about money, Maya. It's about gratitude. And I think somewhere along the way, you traded one for the other. Her jaw tightened. "You think I'm selfish?" "I think you're lost," I said. "And I think someday, when the noise dies down, you'll remember where quiet feels like home." She looked away, blinking too fast. "I didn't come here for a lecture. I didn't give you one," I said. "You asked. I answered." Sophie came out from behind her tire fort, clutching the dog she'd named Lucky. She walked right up to Maya, fearless. "Hi," she said. "You smell like fancy soap." Maya blinked, startled. Thank you?" Sophie nodded. "He fixed our car when it broke. He helps people. That's what he does." For a second, just a flicker, I saw it. The guilt. The realization that maybe the man she'd tried to bury under pride was still the same man who'd carried her through storms and scraped knees. "I have to go," Maya murmured. "I'm flying out tomorrow." I nodded. "Then safe travels." She hesitated like she wanted to say something else, but the words never came. When the door closed behind her, the sound echoed longer than it should have. Ellie rested her hand on my arm. "You okay?" I exhaled, a cloud of breath in the cold. "Yeah, just a ghost walking through daylight." That night I stayed late at the shop, fixing the heater in the corner. I found the business card her lawyer had left weeks ago still lying in the drawer. I tore it in half, then in half again, until it was dust in my palm. Outside, the snow had stopped. The sky was clean, open, and silent. I stepped into it, feeling the cold bite my skin, and for the first time since Maya's betrayal, I felt something else under the ache: peace. Because maybe the point wasn't to get her back. Maybe it was to remember who I was before losing her tried to make me smaller. Inside, the light from Sophie's cardboard castle still glowed. January came heavy. The snow melted into gray slush that filled potholes and soaked through boots. The holidays passed without a word from Maya. I thought it'd hurt more than it did, but truthfully, there wasn't much left to ache. You can only stare at a closed door so long before you start noticing the rest of the room. The shop had become that room. Messy, loud, alive. Ellie brought in a small radio that played country songs between static. Sophie insisted on decorating with paper snowflakes and a hand-painted sign that said Carter's Auto, where cars get better, and so do people. It made me laugh every time I saw it. One morning, while I was under a Jeep, Ellie leaned down beside me. "You know," she said, "you've been smiling more lately." I snorted. "Must be a carburetor-induced symptom." She smirked. "No, it's something else. You're lighter." I paused, the wrench still in my hand. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Guess I had to lose some weight." She didn't ask what I meant. She already knew. Around noon, Sophie burst in from the office, holding a flyer. "Mom, Mr. Carter, look!" It was for a local charity fundraiser, a winter coat drive for kids. There was a picture of Maya, smiling beside a donation box. I stared at it longer than I meant to. "She looks nice," Sophie said. "Is she your daughter?" Ellie froze, waiting for me to react. "She was," I said finally. "Maybe she will be again someday." That night after closing, Ellie and I took Sophie to the diner. We sat at the same booth where we'd met months before. Sophie colored on napkins while Ellie talked about finding a small apartment closer to town. She said it casually, like she didn't want to assume I cared. "You thinking about leaving the shelter for good?" I asked. "Yeah, feels like time," she said. Then, after a pause, "You'll still let me work here, right?" I smiled. "Ellie, you're the reason this place runs." She looked at me, eyes soft, warm. "That's not true." "It is," I said. "Before you two showed up, this shop was just an echo." The waitress refilled our coffee and winked. "You three look like family." Ellie blushed. Sophie grinned. I just nodded, because maybe in some strange way we were. When we left, the sky was deep blue, streetlights glowing against the frost. Sophie ran ahead, spinning in circles, laughing loud enough to make people turn and smile. Ellie and I stood there, breath visible in the cold. "She's happy here," Ellie said softly. "So am I," I answered before I could stop myself. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. The quiet between us said everything. The next morning, a letter arrived. Plain envelope. No return address, but I knew that handwriting instantly. Sharp, careful, always pressing too hard with the pen. Maya. I held it for a long time before opening it. Inside was one page. "Dad, you were right. About money. About people. About me. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. I'm trying to fix things. Starting with myself. Love, Maya." The words blurred as I read them. Not from tears, but from something softer. Relief, maybe. Or the quiet understanding that time had finally done what anger couldn't. I set the letter down, looked around the shop, the coffee machine humming, the scent of oil and soap, Sophie's laughter drifting from the office. My life wasn't rich in the way the world measured it, but it was full, real, built with grease, second chances, and hands that never stopped trying. I smiled, folded the letter carefully and tucked it into my jacket pocket. Some things you don't throw away, not because you need them, but because they remind you how far you've come. By February, the town thawed back into its small, restless rhythm. The highway hummed again with trucks. The coffee at the diner tasted fresh instead of burnt, and Carter's Auto had more work than I could keep up with. Word spread, the shop with the single mom and the little girl who names your car before you leave. Ellie and Sophie made the place warmer than I ever could alone. One afternoon, Ellie was sorting invoices when she froze, brow furrowed. Carter? You might want to see this." She turned the small TV toward me. There was Maya again. Bright lights, camera flashes, the hum of a big city studio. She sat on a talk show couch, that perfect poised smile fixed in place. The headline across the bottom read, "Maya Carter, from small town to millionaire mentor." I set the wrench down, slow. "She's really out there," Ellie said quietly. I watched without saying a word. The host leaned in, asking, "Your father's story went viral after that gas station video. Have you spoken to him since?" Maya's jaw tightened, a pause stretching just long enough to make it feel honest. "We've exchanged a few words," she said carefully. "But sometimes distance helps people grow in their own way. My father taught me resilience, and I carry that with me. Always." Applause, flashing smiles, manufactured healing. I exhaled, half laughing, half tired. "Resilience," I muttered. "That's one word for it." Ellie muted the TV. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "She's doing what she needs to do. Let her have it." But that night, long after I closed the shop, I sat in the dark office staring at the letter she'd sent. The apology. The cracks showing through her armor. I wondered if the cameras made her forget, or if maybe she was still trying to believe her own story. A knock on the door startled me. Ellie stood there, coat pulled tight, cheeks pink from the cold. "You're still here," she said. "Can't sleep," I admitted. She hesitated, then stepped in, closing the door behind her. The air smelled faintly of her shampoo, simple, clean, real. "You keep watching her, hoping she'll say something that makes it right," she said gently. "But you don't need her permission to move on." I leaned back in my chair, looking at her. "You ever lose someone who's still breathing?" She nodded. "Yeah, my husband. He didn't die. He just stopped being someone I could reach." Silence filled the room like a thick blanket. I rubbed my face. "You think kids ever come back?" She walked closer, her voice quiet but steady. "Sometimes, when they finally understand what home feels like again." Outside, the wind howled against the old glass windows. She sat across from me, hands folded, and for a long while neither of us said a word. There was something safe about the quiet, the kind that doesn't demand fixing, just sits beside you until you're ready to breathe again. Finally, she stood. "You should go home, Carter." I looked around at the messy desks, the smell of oil, the sound of Lucky's tail thumping in his sleep. "I am home," I said softly. She smiled, a real one this time. "Then get some rest, homebody." When she left, I sat there a little longer, thinking about how strange it was. The noise of the world screaming through TV screens, and yet the only sound that really mattered was laughter from the shop, a little girl humming while coloring between oil stains, and the sound of my own heart finally not breaking anymore. I turned off the lights, locked the door, and stepped into the cold. Somewhere, far away, my daughter was on a stage. But here, under the soft hum of the street lamp, I was finally standing on mine. March rolled in with wind that rattled the tin roof, and a sky that couldn't make up its mind. Rain one minute, snow the next. Work kept coming though. Farmers, delivery drivers, teenagers who'd pushed their luck on bald tires. The shop stayed busy enough that I didn't have time to think much about Maya, or the hole her absence used to burn in my chest. Then one Thursday afternoon, right before closing, everything went dark. The lights flickered once, twice, and died. The radio stuttered mid-song. "Power outage?" Ellie called from the office. "Looks like it," I said, stepping outside. The whole block was out. Streetlights, stores, even the diner across the road. Just gray sky and wind. Sophie peeked out the door. "It's spooky," she said, eyes wide. "Spooky's just quiet with bad timing," I told her. "Grab that flashlight in the drawer." She handed it over, giggling when the beam bounced across the walls. Lucky barked once, chasing the light like it was a game. Ellie leaned against the counter. "You sure you're not part electrician?" "Old mechanic's secret. Half the job is figuring out why something isn't working." We set candles around the office, the smell of wax and oil mixing into something oddly comforting. With the machines dead, the shop felt strangely peaceful. I could hear the rain tapping the roof, steady and soft. Ellie sat on a stool, pulling her coat tighter. Feels like the world took a breath. Yeah, I said. About time it did. For a while we just listened. To the rain. To Sophie humming quietly to Lucky. To the creak of the old building shifting in the wind. Then Ellie said something I didn't expect. You ever think you were meant to find us? I looked at her. Her face glowed in the candlelight. Tired but beautiful in a way that didn't ask for attention. I think we all end up where we're needed, I said. Even if it's not where we thought we'd be. She smiled faintly. That's a good answer. Before I could say more, my phone buzzed. 1 bar of signal. Enough for a text to crawl through. I checked it. It was from Maya. Dad, something happened. Can I call you? My hands went still. The room seemed to shrink. Ellie noticed. Everything okay? I swallowed hard. I don't know yet. The phone rang a moment later. I stepped outside, rain misting down, the cold cutting through my shirt. I answered. Dad? Her voice cracked like she'd been crying. I didn't know who else to call. What's wrong? It's Tyler. He took most of it. The money. The house. He left. I closed my eyes. The rain felt heavier suddenly, like the sky understood what she'd just said. She kept talking, words tumbling fast. Lawyers, betrayal, debt, the press already circling like vultures. Her world, built on glitter and pride, was collapsing. Maya, I said quietly. Where are you? A hotel in the city. I don't know what to do. Then listen to me, I said. First thing, you're gonna breathe. Then you're gonna come home. She sniffled. Home? Yeah. You remember that place? The one with the bad coffee and the broken heater? There was a pause. You'd still take me back after what I said? I looked up at the dark sky, the reflection of the shop window flickering with candlelight. Kid, I said softly, you don't stop being someone's daughter just because you got lost. For a few seconds, all I heard was her breathing, shaky and small. Then, okay, I'll drive down tomorrow. When I hung up, Ellie was standing in the doorway, flashlight in hand. She's coming home, isn't she? Yeah, I said. She is. Ellie nodded, a small smile on her lips. Then maybe the blackout wasn't such bad timing after all. The lights flickered once, twice, and came back on. The shop glowed warm again, the machines humming like nothing had ever stopped. But I knew better. Something had changed. The dark had made room for something new, something like forgiveness. Maya showed up the next evening just as the sun slipped behind the hills, painting the clouds in shades of gold that made everything look softer than it deserved to. I'd been pretending to work on a carburetor, but really, I was just listening for the sound of her car. When I finally heard tires crunching on gravel, my hands froze. She stepped out wearing clothes that didn't quite fit the same way anymore. Expensive still, but wrinkled, tired. Her hair was pulled back messily, and her eyes were swollen from crying. For the first time since that gas station day, she didn't look like a stranger from a TV screen. She looked like my kid again, broken, scared, human. Hey, I said quietly. She tried to smile, but it trembled. Hey, Dad. Ellie came out from the office, Sophie peeking from behind her legs. You must be Maya, Ellie said, voice kind but careful. Maya nodded, awkward, unsure. Yeah, I'm sorry to just show up like this. Don't be, Ellie said. You're exactly where you need to be. She guided Sophie back inside, giving us space. Maya and I stood there in the fading light, the air cold enough to turn breath into ghosts. She looked around the shop, the worn tools, the grease stains, the paper snowflakes still taped to the walls. You fixed the place up, she said. Had help, I replied. She nodded, eyes glistening. I saw the news about you refusing the offer. I thought you were just being stubborn. Now I think maybe you were being smart. Stubborn and smart look a lot alike when you're tired, I said, half smiling. She laughed weakly, then wiped at her cheek. I messed everything up, Dad. I didn't answer right away. The words were too heavy for quick comfort. Instead, I pulled a stool over, the same one she used to sit on as a kid when I taught her how to change oil. Sit, she did, small again somehow. The silence stretched between us, but it wasn't sharp anymore. It was waiting. I wanted so bad not to be poor, she said finally, voice cracking. I thought money would erase it. The embarrassment, the small-town looks, the pity, but it just made me smaller in a different way. I leaned against the workbench. Money's just a loud way to find out who's still whispering the truth to you. She nodded, tears spilling now. I said terrible things to you. Yeah, I said softly. You did. She looked up, surprised that I didn't deny it. But I get it, I continued. You thought I kept you small because I couldn't give you more. Truth is, I gave you everything I had, every ounce of it. Her chin quivered. And I threw it away. No, I said. You just forgot to look back before you started running. That broke her. She covered her face and sobbed. Real, body-shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep, somewhere childlike. I let her cry. Didn't rush her. Didn't touch her until she reached for me first. When she did, it was desperate, clinging, like she was afraid I'd vanish. I'm so sorry, Dad, she whispered against my shoulder. I know, I said, and I forgive you. We stayed like that for a long time, the hum of the heater and the smell of oil wrapping around us like old familiarity. Outside, snow began to fall again. Light, quiet, forgiving. Ellie peeked out from the office, eyes gentle, then closed the door softly to give us more time. When Maya finally pulled back, her face was red and blotchy, but her eyes looked clearer than I'd seen in years. I don't know where to go, she said. The house is gone. The city's not home. I pointed toward the office. We've got space. It's not fancy, but it's warm. You can stay here a while, figure things out. She looked around again, at the little signs of life. Ellie's mug on the counter, Sophie's drawings pinned up near the clock. You built a whole life here without me, she said softly. Didn't build it without you, I said. Built it because of you. She frowned. Because of me? Yeah, I said. Because losing you made me remember how to hold on to the right things. She nodded slowly, eyes wet again. Then, almost shyly, do you think maybe I could help out here? Just till I get back on my feet? I smiled. You can start by sweeping. That's how everyone begins. For the first time in a long while, she laughed. Small, real, the kind that carries warmth. As she grabbed the broom, Ellie came out with 2 cups of coffee. I figured you both could use these, she said. Maya hesitated. Thank you. Ellie handed her a cup, her smile steady. Welcome home. And right then, as the 3 of us stood under that flickering shop light, me, my daughter, and the woman who'd helped me believe in family again, I realized something. You don't always get the life you wanted, but if you're lucky, you get the people who make the one you have worth living. The next morning, the shop smelled like coffee, cold metal, and something new. Peace. Maya was already up when I came in, wearing an old flannel shirt of mine and sweeping the floor like she meant it. The broom bristles scratched across concrete, pushing sawdust, old leaves, and bits of forgotten years into one big pile. Morning, I said, half expecting her to vanish like a dream. She smiled faintly. You sleep? Not much, I admitted. Kept waiting to wake up and find out yesterday didn't happen. She chuckled, soft and tired. Yeah, me too. Ellie came in a few minutes later, hair tucked under a knit hat, holding 2 thermoses and a small paper bag. I brought breakfast. Figured you could use it, she said, setting it on the counter. Maya's voice came quiet. Thank you. I didn't want to, intrude. Ellie shook her head. This place has room for good people. You're fine. Sophie came bouncing in behind her, dragging Lucky by his leash. Dad, look who's here, she said. The word Dad slipped out before she realized it wasn't for me, and she froze, embarrassed. Oh, I mean, Mr. Carter. I smiled. Nah, you can keep calling me that. Makes me sound younger. Maya laughed, but there was a shimmer of something in her eyes. Something wistful, maybe jealous, maybe longing. The morning moved slow and easy. Ellie sorted invoices, Sophie played in her fort, and Maya helped me with a pickup that needed a new alternator. She wasn't much of a mechanic, but she tried, and I didn't care how many bolts she dropped. It was the trying that mattered. By noon, we were all eating sandwiches in the office, the air filled with laughter and the smell of motor grease. Maya sat across from Ellie, listening as Sophie told a long, winding story about Lucky's secret detective adventures. For the first time, I saw Maya not as the woman on TV or the lost daughter from a headline, but just a person again, stripped of gold and guilt, trying to start over. When the phone rang, I grabbed it, expecting another customer. Instead, it was a reporter. "Mr. Carter, this is the State Tribune. We heard rumors your daughter returned home after her financial fallout. Can we get a statement?" I stared at the receiver, every instinct in me bristling. "No statement," I said. "And don't call here again." Maya's face fell. "They found me? They'll always find noise," I said. "That's their job. Ours is to stay quiet enough to keep living." Ellie nodded. "Then let's keep our doors open but our mouths shut." The rest of the day went by without words we didn't need. Maya worked until her palms blistered. Ellie hummed while she filed paperwork. Sophie made paper crowns for everyone, even Lucky. By sunset, the shop looked less like a business and more like what it had quietly become, a refuge for the tired, the hurt, and the ones still learning how to love again. When I locked up that night, Maya lingered by the door. "I don't deserve this, Dad," she said softly. I turned to her. "You don't have to deserve love. You just have to stay long enough to learn from it." Her eyes welled up again. "You always say the right thing." I smiled. "No, I just had more time to say the wrong ones first." She laughed through the tears. Then she reached into her pocket and handed me something. A crumpled lottery ticket, the same kind from that day at the gas station. "I found it when I packed my things," she said. "Thought about throwing it away, but maybe you should have it. Not as money, just as a reminder." I took it, feeling its fragile paper edges, remembering the noise, the cameras, the hurt. And now, standing in a quiet shop filled with laughter and second chances, it almost seemed like a different lifetime. "Thanks," I said. "But I don't need reminders. You're here. That's enough." Maya smiled, and for a moment she looked 10 years old again. The same little girl who once believed in everything. When she went to bed that night, I stood alone in the garage, holding that ticket. It wasn't worth a cent anymore. But in that small, oil-stained room, I realized it had finally paid off. Not in money, in meaning. Spring crept into the valley slow, like it was afraid to wake anyone. The air got softer, the ground smelled of wet earth, and the cold that had hung over everything finally broke. At the shop, we started leaving the doors open again, letting the breeze drift through. Maya settled into the rhythm like she'd been there all along. She came early, stayed late, and worked with a quiet focus that reminded me of someone I used to be. Steady, humble, learning as she went. Every now and then she'd catch herself looking at me, like she still couldn't believe she was allowed to stay. One morning I found her sitting outside on the hood of an old Ford, staring at the sunrise. A cup of coffee steamed beside her. "Morning," I said, handing her a wrench. "You're up early?" She smiled, faint and sleepy. "Couldn't stay in that bed. The quiet felt too loud." "That's how you know life's slowing down for the right reasons," I said, sitting beside her. She looked down at her hands. "You ever wish things had gone differently?" "Every man does," I said. "But wishing's just a way to stay stuck. Better to build something with what's left." She nodded, chewing on the words. "I met with the lawyer yesterday," she said. "There's not much left. Most of the money's gone." I shrugged. "Money's just a tool, Maya. You learn that when your hands are dirty long enough." She gave a small, self-conscious laugh. "Guess I'm finally learning." "Good," I said. "You were overdue for a real education." Later that day, a customer came in, a teacher from the elementary school down the road. He was there to pick up his van, and while waiting, he mentioned the after-school program he ran for local kids. Ellie perked up immediately. "They could use some help fixing the place up," she said to Maya. "Might be good for you to do something different." Maya hesitated. "You think they'd want me there? After everything that's been said about me?" Ellie's voice was gentle. "They'll want someone who shows up. That's all people ever really need." The next week, Maya went. She came back covered in paint splatters, hair tied back, laughing like she hadn't in years. "We built a new playset," she said proudly. "Sophie helped." Sophie jumped in. "And Maya taught me how to mix colors." I grinned. "Sounds like the world's finally getting a bit of you it can use." That night, while locking up, Ellie and I stood by the door, watching the two of them, Maya and Sophie, feeding Lucky bits of leftover sandwich. "She's different," Ellie said quietly. "You can see it in her." "Yeah," I said. Sometimes you have to lose everything shiny before you start to see the light. Ellie turned to me, smiling. You always talk like that? I chuckled. Only when I'm trying to sound wise in front of someone smarter. She rolled her eyes but didn't look away. You ever think about what's next for you, Carter? I looked at her, then at the small family forming around me like something accidental but meant. Yeah, I said finally. But for the first time, I'm not trying to plan it. I just want to keep what I've got alive. Outside, the crickets started singing, the shop lights casting long shadows across the gravel. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a man waiting for something to go wrong. I felt like someone quietly, finally, getting it right. And in that silence, the hum of the town, the laughter of two women who'd both lost and found themselves here, I knew one thing for sure. Sometimes, redemption doesn't come with thunder or applause. It comes with oil-stained hands, small miracles, and the sound of a heart learning how to rest. The day she came back to town for good, the sky was clean and blue, and for once, the wind didn't carry that restless edge. It was mid-April, the kind of day that makes old men wash their trucks and kids chase baseballs in empty lots. I was under a hood, elbow deep in a busted radiator, when Ellie's voice came from the office. Soft, surprised. Carter, you've got company. I wiped my hands and stepped out, ready for another customer. But it wasn't a stranger. It was her, my ex-wife, Linda, Maya's mother. She looked older, different kind of older than me. The city had carved lines around her eyes and drawn the warmth right out of her. Still, there she was, standing in the sunlight with a leather bag over her shoulder and hesitation written in every move. Hey Tom, she said, using my name like it was fragile. Linda, I said. Wasn't expecting you. I heard, she said, glancing around the shop, about Maya, about everything. She wouldn't answer my calls, so you came here, I finished for her. She nodded, eyes dropping to the floor. Maya must have heard her voice because she appeared from the back of the shop, wiping her hands on a rag. For a moment, she froze. Then, Mom? The air between them stretched tight, full of years they'd both tried to outrun. Linda stepped forward, tears glinting. Oh, baby, you're thinner. You okay? Maya crossed her arms, not angry, but guarded. I'm fine. Better than I've been in a long time. Linda reached out, then stopped halfway. I never should have let things go the way they did. I thought I was helping you, pushing you to be more, but I just made you ashamed of where you came from. Maya's jaw trembled. You told me Dad was the reason we were stuck. You said he had no ambition. Linda's voice cracked. I said a lot of things I didn't understand. I wanted to fix our lives, and I blamed the wrong person for why I couldn't. I stood there not saying a word. Some moments aren't meant to be interrupted. Ellie quietly ushered Sophie and Lucky outside, closing the door behind them. The shop fell still, just the slow ticking of a cooling engine. Maya looked at her mother for a long time before saying, I learned the hard way that money can't fix what you won't face. Linda nodded. Then you learned faster than I did. The two women stood there, a small universe of pain and forgiveness suspended between them, until Maya finally took that step forward. Linda pulled her into a hug, one of those broken, messy embraces that don't fix anything but remind you you're still human. I turned away, giving them space, but not before Maya whispered, It's okay, Mom. We're both here now. When they finally pulled apart, Linda's eyes found mine. You did good, Tom, she said quietly. You kept her heart beating. I gave a small shrug. Tried my best. Took a few detours. She smiled, sad but genuine. You were always the better one. Don't start lying now, I said. That broke the tension, just enough for a laugh to escape all three of us. Ellie peeked back in, cautious. Everything all right? Maya turned to her, face glowing in a way I hadn't seen since she was a kid. Yeah, everything's finally all right. Linda left before sunset, promising to visit again. As her car disappeared down the road, Maya slipped her arm through mine. I used to think home was a place, she said. Now I think it's just where people still let you try again. I squeezed her hand. Then you're home for good. The evening light slanted across the shop, hitting the window where Sophie's painted sign hung crooked but proud. Carter's Auto, where cars get better, and so do people. For once, it didn't feel like a slogan. It felt like truth. By summer, the whole town knew Maya was back. You can't keep something like that quiet here. Not in a place where the diner's gossip board travels faster than the mail truck. At first, people whispered. Some pitied her. Others judged her. A few pretended they hadn't called her that girl who forgot where she came from. But small towns have short memories when kindness shows up again. Maya didn't hide. Every morning she came to work like everyone else. Jeans, ponytail, grease on her fingers. She smiled at customers, learned how to run invoices, and stayed late to sweep floors without being asked. Ellie showed her how to manage orders, and soon the two were talking and laughing like sisters. Sophie adored her, always tugging on her sleeve, asking if she'd braid her hair or help her draw grown-up stuff. It didn't take long before people noticed. One afternoon, while I was under a truck replacing a fuel line, I heard the bell over the door ring and a familiar voice say, "Well, I'll be damned." The prodigal daughter returns. It was Ray, the shop owner who'd sold me the business when I was broke and half beaten down. He had that smirk of a man who never let go of the past too easily. Maya straightened. "Hi, Mr. Ray. Didn't think I'd see you around these parts again," he said. "After all that TV business." She didn't flinch. "Yeah, I didn't think so either, but it turns out humility's a good teacher." Ray raised his brows, clearly thrown off by her calm. "Well, guess your old man rubbed off on you after all." He turned to me, grin crooked. "Didn't figure you'd take her back so easy, Tom." I wiped my hands on a rag. "Didn't take her back. She came home. There's a difference." He nodded slowly like he wanted to say something else but didn't know how. "You always were better at fixing people than engines," he muttered, then left with a wave. When the door shut, Maya exhaled. "I thought I could handle people's looks," she said. "But it's harder than I remembered." Ellie stepped in quietly. "They'll forget the looks. What they won't forget is what you do now." Maya nodded. "Then I'll give them something worth remembering." And she did. Over the next few weeks, she organized a free car clinic at the shop. Oil changes for single moms, tire checks for seniors, tune-ups for people who couldn't afford repairs. She got half the town involved without even realizing it. The high schoolers came to volunteer. The diner donated lunch, and the local news ran a short piece titled, "Carter's Auto Gives Back." The irony didn't escape me. The same cameras that once caught her at her worst now filmed her handing a wrench to an old farmer and laughing like she finally understood what real wealth looked like. That night, after everyone left and the last car pulled away, I stood outside the shop with her. The air smelled of gasoline and cut grass. The sky streaked orange and gold. "You did good today," I said. She leaned on the railing, eyes on the horizon. "I didn't do it for them, Dad. I did it for me. For us." I nodded. "Still counts." She smiled, the wind catching her hair. "You ever think maybe this was supposed to happen? Me falling apart like that?" I thought for a moment. "Yeah. Sometimes the only way people see who they are is when the mirror cracks." She let that sit a while, then said, "I'm glad you didn't stop waiting for me." "I didn't wait," I said. "I just kept the door unlocked." She turned to me, eyes glimmering in the dusk. "You know, I used to think you were poor because you didn't chase money. And now?" I asked. "Now I think you were rich before I even understood the word." I didn't say anything, just put my arm around her shoulders as the last light disappeared over the hills. Inside the shop, Ellie turned off the radio. Sophie giggled somewhere in the back, and Lucky barked once, chasing shadows. The world felt small again, just big enough for the right people. For the first time, I realized something simple. Sometimes redemption doesn't look like paying back what was lost. It looks like staying long enough to make it mean something new. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the past came driving up in a rented BMW, the kind of car that doesn't belong on our cracked little street, tires too clean, paint too polished. I was under the hood of a Chevy when the door opened, and a man in a dark gray suit stepped out, sunglasses gleaming, phone still glued to his ear. He looked around like he was stepping into a museum of rust. Then he saw Maya and froze. "Maya?" he said, voice soft but sharp. Her wrench clattered onto the floor. "Tyler." I straightened slowly, the air between us thick as oil. Tyler looked different, thinner, maybe meaner, but his smile still had that salesman shine. He walked forward like he owned the place. "You've been hard to find," he said. "You changed your number." "Yeah," Maya said flatly. "On purpose." Ellie stepped out of the office, eyes narrowing. She gave me that silent look. "You want me to stay?" I nodded once. She stayed. Tyler shoved his hands in his pockets. "I didn't come here to fight." "Good," I said. "Then don't." He glanced at me, a little smirk twitching. "You must be proud, huh? Raised the lottery queen. Shame how fast that all burned out." I stepped forward, wiping my hands on a rag, slow and deliberate. "You might want to think real carefully about how you finish that sentence." He swallowed, pretending to laugh it off, but his eyes darted to Maya. "Look, I made mistakes, okay? Things got out of control. I got involved with people I shouldn't have, but I can fix this." Maya crossed her arms. "You stole from me, Tyler. You drained everything I had." He shook his head. "I was trying to protect it. The investments fell through, but—" "Don't lie," she said. Her voice was steady, cold as metal. "You didn't lose it. You spent it." The shop went silent except for the ticking of a cooling engine. Tyler's face shifted, the fake confidence melting. "I came to say I'm sorry," he muttered. "And maybe ask if we can talk. Start over." I almost laughed. "You got some nerve walking in here asking for second chances in a place built on real ones." Maya looked at me, then at him. "Dad," she said quietly. "It's okay." She stepped closer to Tyler, her expression calm but unreadable. "You know what's funny?" she said. "For months I thought you took everything from me. My money, my trust, my pride. But you didn't. You just helped me find out what I never really needed." He blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I don't hate you," she said. "And I don't owe you forgiveness either. I just don't want your shadow here anymore." She pulled a folded paper from her pocket, a restraining order, already signed. "I made sure of that." Tyler's face went pale. He looked at me like maybe I'd back him up. I didn't move. "You should go," I said. "Before I forget what peace feels like." He hesitated, jaw tight, then turned and walked out. The BMW's engine revved, gravel spitting under its tires. When the sound faded, Maya let out a breath that shook her whole body. Ellie came over, set a hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" Maya nodded slowly. "Yeah. For the first time, I think I am." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman she'd become. Steady, scarred, strong. She'd finally found her way out of the noise, out of the gold-tinted lies, and into something real. I reached out and tucked a stray hair behind her ear like I used to when she was a kid. "You handled that better than I ever could have." She smiled, eyes glimmering. "Guess I learned from the best." Ellie squeezed my arm, and Sophie came running from the back, holding Lucky's leash and shouting, "Did we win?" Maya laughed through her tears. "Yeah, kiddo," she said, kneeling down. "We did." The shop filled with the sound of it. Laughter, alive and loud, the kind that cleans the air after a storm. Outside, the sun dipped low, spilling gold across the gravel and glass. For a long while, none of us said anything. We didn't have to. The silence was full of victory, because the man who walked out in that suit left empty, and the people who stayed behind finally understood what rich really meant. The next morning, the world felt lighter. Maya came in early, made coffee, and brought a loaf of banana bread she'd baked herself. The smell filled the shop, warm, sweet, the kind of comfort you can't fake. Sophie took a bite, eyes wide. "This is so good. You should sell it." Maya laughed. "I used to think I'd own a mansion. Now I just want a kitchen that smells like this." I sipped my coffee and smiled. "That's a better dream anyway." Ellie leaned against the counter. "You three are dangerous together. You'll have this town spoiled." It was simple. Just bread, laughter, and sunlight spilling through dirty windows. But it felt like a ceremony. A quiet proof that peace doesn't need an audience. Maya caught me watching her. "What?" she said. I shook my head. "Nothing. Just proud of you." She smiled, softer this time. "Thanks for waiting for me to become someone worth being proud of." I set my mug down. "You always were. You just couldn't see it yet." Outside, Lucky barked at the mail truck. Life went on. But in that moment, I realized something small and beautiful. For the first time in years, no one here wanted more than what they already had. A month later, summer settled in for good. The air turned heavy with heat and the sound of cicadas. The shop doors stayed open all day, sunlight pouring across the floor. Business was steady, the kind of steady that lets you breathe. Ellie handled the phones, Maya managed customers, Sophie ran around painting hearts on cardboard boxes. Lucky napped by the fan, tail thumping whenever someone said his name. One evening, after closing, Maya came out of the office holding an envelope. "Dad," she said quietly, "this came for you." It was a check from a bank in the city, a refund from one of her old accounts. Enough to start over, enough to tempt old ghosts. I looked at it, then at her. "What do you want to do with it?" She smiled. "I already did something. I transferred it to the local orphanage. They're building a new playground. I figured it's about time money went somewhere it can't hurt anyone." I stared at her for a long moment. Then I laughed. Not the hollow kind, the real kind. The kind that shakes loose every old ache. "You figured that out faster than most folks do in a lifetime." She shrugged. "Guess I had a good teacher." We stood in the quiet hum of dusk, light fading, the smell of motor oil and fresh paint mixing in the air. I thought about everything we'd been through, the hurt, the distance, the long road back, and realized we'd made it. Not richer, not famous, just whole. I put my arm around her shoulders. "You did good, kid." She leaned into me, her voice small. "We did." Inside, Ellie turned off the last light. Sophie laughed somewhere out back, and for once, I didn't think about yesterday or tomorrow. Just that moment, warm, earned, and enough. Because in the end, we don't keep the winnings. We keep the people who stayed. The end.